Welcome back to the Carolina Packers podcast, where today, sadly, we're going to go over the Packers' performance at the end of the year.
The word of the day, I think, is maybe inevitability.
Probably would be. I got if you guys watched our last video about the Packers, I definitely thought that we would go past the lines. I did mention that they are a good team. I did throw them that, but I said, with how we've been playing 4 games in a row, and then how we just crushed the Vikings, I thought for sure we were good. I thought we were going to beat the Lions and go from there. Obviously, sadly, we did not perform well. We ended up losing the game, and now we end up having the 15th overall pick and looking into a very interesting offseason now. I think the obvious first thing to look at is Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
His situation is very interesting. Obviously, the GM came out and said that we're waiting for his decision, seeing what he wants to do, and we'll go from there. He's owed like $40 million this coming year. It's only going to get worse from there. So if he does retire, there's a way we can finagle it where we do like half this year and half next year and kind of spread out that cash. So if he retires this year, it would probably be the best year to retire financially for the Packers, I should say. With these next coming years, it's like $60 million or something like that these coming years. And with Jordan Love waiting in the wings, obviously this year would be his last year of his rookie deal, and then he has the 5th-year option. But the 5th-year option at that point will be like $20 million. So next year, hypothetically, we could be paying $80 million or somewhere around there to our quarterback position by itself, which is a very interesting situation. Again, I think the most important thing is looking and seeing if we have a chance of making the playoffs or winning the Super Bowl even next year. And it's tough to say. I think our special teams obviously improved immensely with Nixon. And hopefully that'll continue to grow next year. We also have, Rich is the special teams coordinator, is going to be hopefully continue to grow with the team and continue to make that better. We obviously haven't been good in the special teams for quite a couple years. So having that locked down and having him back there, obviously first team All-Pro for Nixon, which was awesome to see. He deserves it. So special teams is fine. Obviously, hopefully it'll grow. Offense, obviously quarterback I just went over. We'll see what happens with that. But obviously wide receiver is a big issue. We have a bunch of free agents with Allen Lazard. We have Randall Cobb as a free agent. Obviously our tight ends with Tunyon and Mercedes Lewis. I think a lot of that comes down to what happens to Aaron Rodgers, and then there will be the domino effect with Aaron Rodgers comes back. Most likely Mercedes Lewis comes back, and maybe Cobb comes back. Obviously, I think that's ultimately going to be up to Aaron Rodgers if he wants Cobb to come back. And Lazard seemed like with his post game conference, he didn't want to come back. Again, I think it's tough to say with the offense we have. I think Lazard is a very vital piece with our rushing game and how well he blocks on the outside. But I think his security blanket, he's done well. Obviously, he's had a better year this year, but I still feel like, obviously, all Packers fans know he's not the number. He can't be a number one. He's not good enough to be a number one. And again, do I want him back? I guess so, but I don't want to pay him a lot of money, which is I think was what he's going to be asking for. And so, if he's asking for that $12 million a year. He can go get that from another team and go on his way. But offensive wise, obviously Bakhtiari, obviously Aaron Jones needs to restructure their deals. Bakhtiari maybe can take a pay cut just based on the fact that he is just so expensive and didn't play a lot, so maybe he'll help the team out with taking a pay cut. And then obviously Aaron Jones is owed a lot of money this year. maybe we can do like we usually do and just kind of push that down years from now. But again, you're pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down. At some point, it's going to catch up to us. And what might happen is the year that Aaron Rodgers leaves, we might, just bite the bullet, pay a bunch of people, get rid of a bunch of people, and see what happens from there.
I have some thoughts on this. I was telling you about that article I saw, an ESPN article, which I guess I could try and find it. But the run of it was essentially a interview or I don't know, post game comments with the GM of the Packers talking about their future with Aaron Rodgers, and he was generous enough to say, I'm not feeling about moving on, and if I could look Aaron Rodgers in the eye and tell him I didn't think he was the future, or something like that, if I needed to. And I thought that was, I thought it was funny. I thought it was trying to imply a position of strength in a way that I think is laughable.
Yeah.
Because in my opinion, the person that needs to go is the GM. He is on the hot seat and should have been on the hot seat years ago. We were, prior to beginning, looking at teams and how they're set up for future success in the NFL. The structure of the Packers makes no sense. Nothing about this team makes any sense, and it is purely the GM's fault. We know, or should, so the idea to me, and again, maybe I'm not looking into it enough. Maybe there's actually a Patrick Mahomes hiding behind Aaron Rodgers. But the serious discussion that I hear coming out of the Packers of, Jordan Love is the future, all this. Maybe we could trade him to be the future of another team. That is laughable to me.
Yeah.
We have seen nothing, I think, in preseason play, in season play, nothing to imply that Jordan Love is anything more exceptional than your standard run-of-the-mill second-string quarterback that everyone has. Now, the GM, I'm sure, would sit there and say, we lit a fire under Aaron Rodgers by drafting him and all that stuff. That, I think we can say is incidental. Because, maybe you lit a fire under him, but what would have lit a fire more? Drafting a quarterback or giving him that carrot in front by drafting or trading for a really good wide receiver? Once you lit that fire, he then let the fire fade. He did nothing with acquiring pieces for his second MVP season, right, in a row after he had that exceptional one. There has still been this idea that Aaron Rodgers is about to fall off and be dumped. And every season, that is how the offseason is put together, right? They built, essentially, or are trying to build, a replica of the 49ers offense, right? They want a quality running back scheme. They've invested heavily in Aaron Jones, right? And A.J. Dillon has also been playing well, which I think theoretically should call into question the wisdom of investing heavily in Aaron Jones, because you've got a great running back. You've got another guy coming up behind him. Instead of saying, well, we'll just keep this up. We'll just have a scheme-based running back play. Okay, you want to have a running back scheme, but we're going to pay one of the running backs a huge amount of money. Well, why would you do that? Right? Because it's not like an Ezekiel Elliott, Christian McCaffrey situation where you've got a running back and a quarterback and you just want that one dominant running back. They're trying to do, apparently, a 49ers scheme where you could just rotate good running backs in and out and balance them with each other, but you take one of them and say, well, you're indispensable. And that's not mistaken. Aaron Jones is, in fact, indispensable at this moment. And to make that make sense, what you were talking about with Allen Lazard, he is, like you said, not a great wide receiver. He's not a number one wide receiver. He probably is indicating that he wants to go somewhere else, again, as a power move to try to get a higher salary. It should be a bluff, but it's not a bluff. In the same way that Aaron Jones was able to demand a large salary, even though he is a scheme running back. Why is that? That is because the GM has somehow structured this team around an all-time great quarterback with 2 MVP wins in the last 3 seasons. He has structured it in such a way that there is no offensive talent other than that quarterback, to where you've got, Aaron Jones, again, very good running back, good pass catcher. He's essentially one of their top, if not their top, offensive options for passing. So he can, as a scheme running back, demand a high salary, and you almost have to pay him, because by losing him, you don't just lose your scheme running back that you've tried to build your team around. Because of your incompetence at wide receiver, you now lose your number 1 passing option.
Yeah.
Then you have Alan Lazard. He's not a number 1, but statistically, he is their number 1. He can now demand, as a second-rate wide receiver, by all appearances, wide receiver number 1 money, because of your incompetence, again, in not drafting a good wide receiver, in not making big moves for any of the capable receivers that have come through. He hasn't been able to close the deal, right? To where you've got a scheme that you've been building for years, and it breaks down. You can't now have just a rotating running back scheme position that's cheap, because those running backs are your wide receivers. You have to pay them that kind of money. You can't have a number 1 wide receiver, because you now have to pay a second-rate guy, potentially, top money, because if you lose Lazard, you have what? A 32 going on 33-year-old Randall Cobb. You've got Christian Watson, who hopefully continues to improve.
Yeah.
But is he number 1 next year?
He would. So that's the thing. So I think the way the Packers structured Aaron Jones' deal was, for the first 2 years, I'm pretty sure it was a 4-year. I don't know for sure year-wise, but for the first 2 years, he was getting paid around $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so they put all the money on the back end, which obviously is now.
Yes.
Which, again, in hindsight, if the Packers had used those 2 years to go all in
on a big
wide receiver, they had Adams at that point. They had everybody.
Yep.
You go all in 2020, maybe 2021, and then obviously this year. So it would be 2021 and 2022. So these past 2 years, if you had gone all in, you got a wide receiver, go along with Adams, retain Adams, especially after if maybe we had won the Super Bowl, maybe he would have stayed. I don't know. We don't know what would have happened. But we go out and get a wide receiver, trade like the Rams did. They went for it.
Yes.
That 1 year, we could talk about what's happening now,
but
they have the Super Bowl.
They
right?
won a Super Bowl 2 years ago.
And so that's the whole situation. Is you structured the contract that way in order to build the team, but then you didn't build the team. There was no risk taken. There was no trading. There was no drafting of any wide receivers.
And they're going far enough in that they're locked into these different paths, but they won't take the path all the way down. So you now have all these semi-realized strategies with no clear direction of how they're going to reconcile. You have a quarterback that you owe $40 million, who, again, is one of the top quarterbacks in the league, or was at least last year, one of the top quarterbacks of all time. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to do what Tampa Bay did. We're going to do what the Chiefs have done, what they're doing with Joe Burrow now and with Trevor Lawrence in Cincinnati and Jacksonville. And we're going to put together a great core of young, fast wide receivers, get a really good tight end, and play into that scheme. Instead, you just pay the quarterback the money as if you're going to do that, and then you don't get those wide receivers.
That's the thing.
And at the same time, you look at the 49ers and say, wow, the 49ers have done this. What's another team? The Browns have very successfully done this running scheme, and say, wow, they have this excellent 1-2 running back punch that you can almost rotate quarterbacks in and out. We're going to pay Aaron Jones, or you shouldn't have to, but we're gonna set up a scheme where we've got 2 really good running backs, and we'll just start drafting running backs, right? But you're not going to be drafting running backs because now you've paid Aaron Jones, so he's staying. You also then haven't leaned into the whole, well, we can now put any quarterback into the system because Aaron Rodgers isn't going anywhere. You've paid him.
Yeah.
So you have locked yourself into these 2 weird positions that don't reconcile. You have no money, apparently, to get a great wide receiver. And think about how many years the Packers have had an inconsistent special teams.
Mm-hmm.
That's the GM's fault.
Mm-hmm.
You have to immediately reconcile that. You think about how many years you've had an inconsistent defense. How is that possible? Think of the money that you guys have put into defensive players.
Draft capital
Where
too.
is it going, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in all of this, I don't see the guts or the foresight of making a really good move to set up the team going forward.
Yeah.
Right? Like, admittedly, the 2 MVP seasons, that should have been. I mean, you guys went to the NFC Championship, right?
Went
Both
to the
times?
NFC Championship. Well,
At least one time.
we
right?
went one time, and then the second time. Oh yeah, we did. We did.
Or
Right?
were you
Because
first rounded?
did he win last year? He won the MVP this past year, right?
Last year, yes.
Yeah. So no, we were first rounded last year.
So you had Devontae Adams.
Mhm.
After that first NFC Championship win,
Yeah.
it was a mistake, I think, to say we're running it back
Mhm.
with the exact same squad. That's when you say, all right, there's some wide receivers on the market, and you go all in, right? But they didn't do that. It was kind of like, well, yeah, Aaron Rodgers won MVP. Okay, we're kind of stuck with him, but maybe Jordan Love's the future. Maybe it's an aberration. Then he wins again, and you lose Devontae Adams, but then there's this idea of, oh, well, Aaron Rodgers has won 2 times in a row. We've got this running back scheme. Maybe we can just make it all work. Maybe it will just magically come together. Obviously, it didn't. You have to really start thinking about draft capital, trade capital. What can the Packers do? Because once Aaron Rodgers is gone, I don't see Jordan Love helming up a team with no wide receiver talent and some running backs that will be getting older, right?
Yeah.
And an
so,
aging defense. There's no clear plan. The GM has to go, I think.
it's so difficult because I think the defense that the Packers have is really good. I think on paper they have amazing players. I think the scheme, I think the coaching staff, I think Joe Barry, a lot of Packers fans already know, we want him to go, but did he do enough within these past 4 games or before this past game, the 4-game winning streak? We had like 12 takeovers or turnovers, and the defense showed up.
Mm-hmm.
But again, as Packer fans, we want consistency.
Yeah.
We need this is a top 10 defense.
Should be.
On paper, this is we were even talking beginning of the year, top 5 defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were talking about this team is going to go places. They, obviously, I think last year Jair Alexander was injured, so he came back. Obviously, he had the amazing game against the Vikings against Justin Jefferson. But other than that, he's been solid. But it just, the thing that I think upsets a lot of Packers fans, a lot of fans everywhere, is it's 4th and 5 or 4th and 3, and we're playing 7 yards off.
Yeah.
In what world they do a quick out route, 3 yard out route, put the ball over the line to gain, and it's over.
Yep.
And that's what upsets a lot of Packers, obviously. But going back to the offense, I think Packers fans have always been like, we need to trade for a wide receiver, we need to draft a wide receiver, all that kind of stuff. And I think the issue that we have now is we're in this kind of flux where, like Ian was saying, we didn't have we're going for it now, but then we can kind of build from there. Like, if we drafted, obviously not Justin Jefferson, but someone like in that draft class, we draft someone in 2020 instead of the quarterback, or even in 2021, even after, we made the mistake of drafting the quarterback, we have this year, Aaron Rodgers won MVP, 2021, we're drafting a quarterback
And-
or wide receiver.
And you potentially, like, if you want a quick fix,
Mhm.
you potentially make trades, make concessions to make that happen, and not get, in the 4th round some
Yeah.
train up a couple of years he's a good wide receiver. You try to get one of the top wide receivers in that draft class that you can plug in as a number 2
Yeah.
right away behind Devontae Adams
Exactly.
and push for a win.
Mhm.
That's what a serious team, I think, would do.
That's
I
the
just
issue.
don't. It is like you have paid people like you have confidence in them, but then don't invest like you actually have confidence.
Mhm.
It's like the GM has set up all these different schemes with the fear almost that any one of these people he's allegedly put confidence in and is paying like he's put confidence in, will just fail in any moment. Well, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because they haven't leaned into anything. They didn't signal to Devontae Adams that there was going to be any future in Green Bay. I'm sure what he heard was probably, has to be, what was actually talked about because they did it when he left. I bet after 2 seasons of the same team, Aaron Rodgers playing at MVP level, and they don't make it happen, their first round, and I bet the talk from the GM, from the coaching staff was, we're running it back. This is the team, we're running it back. And he said, I'm getting older. Aaron Rodgers is getting older. This team appears to be regressing. We were NFC, finals, knocked down to first round exit. What do you mean we're running it back? I'm going to go play with my friend Derek Carr and get out of Green Bay. He leaves, and unbelievably, what they choose to do is we're running it back.
Yeah.
Minus the best offensive weapon we have. And what happens? You lose, you don't even make playoffs.
Nope.
I don't see any clear vision over the last 3 years.
And I think what happened was a lot of what Packers' issue is timing. I think timing is what really has hurt us these past couple of years as well. Obviously, it's not drafting correctly, right? It's not making the smart decisions. Obviously, it boils down to that. But I think a lot of it's also timing. You look at Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers coming off of that year was not doing well. Was kind of regressing. Kind of injuries have been plaguing him. It wasn't looking good, and he was, I think, obviously at that point was 36, 37. So,
Yep.
And also he was talking about obviously we know now that he kind of is very open about his, okay, I want to retire. I want to do what's best for me. Kind of up in the air about that. So it kind of was unfortunate because it kind of forced maybe the hands of the Packers to draft the quarterback. Because again, yes, he did go on back-to-back MVP streaks after that. But at that point, it was a very difficult decision. Yes, should we have traded up for Jordan Love? Probably not. Should we have done... looking back on it is hindsight 2020 or whatever. But at that point, Aaron Rodgers was, over 35, over that kind of okay, he's kind of older. He had been playing
I have to disagree. When did they draft Jordan Love?
2020.
In the 2018 season.
2019 was the last year.
Right. So in the 2018 season, Aaron Rodgers passed for 4,400 yards with 25 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. The next season, after which they drafted Jordan Love, he had a 4,000-yard season, 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Again, I can understand why you would want to have a decent quarterback. I understand picking up a quarterback, but they traded up to get Jordan Love, and they traded up to get the quarterback that was Jordan Love, right?
I think
Aaron Rodgers, in his MVP season, yes, the big thing is he threw for way more touchdowns, but still had 4,300 yards, and then the next MVP season, 4,100 yards. So as far as yardage goes, he's been floating around the same kind of thing for a while. You don't lean into the weapons, even with the timing. You can't predict maybe that he's going to throw for almost twice as many touchdowns. But as soon as that happens, don't you have to be able to pivot And that's the thing is I don't see the plan or the ability to let go of this.
Well, the issue though too is we had probably, if you really think about it, he was 36, played well, but was also kind of like was playing okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at it, it's like, okay, yes, should they have drafted a wide receiver weapon and then drafted the quarterback maybe second round, third round to try to get behind him? Because what they were probably looking at was, okay, yes, Aaron Rodgers has been solid, but we need a backup plan. We need that second plan. So maybe they're trying to, go for the future. Say, okay, worst case scenario, he sits behind Aaron Rodgers for 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers retires. He's been sitting behind him for 2-3 years, is now ready to go play.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's what they were looking at. And that's why I also think timing is unfortunate this year too, is because finally Aaron Rodgers obviously been injured with the finger, kind of ribs, kind of banged up, kind of obviously trying to get into it with the wide receivers, learning that as well. You look at that situation, and worst case scenario was, I hate to say it, but we lost the last game of the year to knock us out of playoff contention.
Yeah.
We lose any one of those other 4 in a row, like we put in Jordan Love.
Yes.
Because we are automatically out of playoff contention. He has multiple games to show us
what he can do. Yep.
And so it sucks that timing-wise and just, yes, we went on this stretch and it was fun to watch and be a part of and everything. But again, knowing that we lost, it sucks that it wasn't, maybe not the first loss of this streak, but like second or third against like the Dolphins or something like that. If we lost to like the Bears or something like that, where we could have seen multiple weeks of Jordan Love preparation, Jordan Love going against the Vikings, going against the Lions, going up against a better team. Because obviously we saw him against the Eagles and he had a couple of good plays, but that was after the fact. The game was pretty much over at that point.
So I'm actually gonna contest that a little bit. I don't know that it would make a difference. And the reason I say that is, let's say you guys did lose first game, right, of that 4-game winning streak, and you put Jordan Love in.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say he actually plays pretty good. Well, what happens? Do you not try to keep Aaron Rodgers? I think you still try to keep Aaron Rodgers.
I think depending on how he plays
way better than Aaron Rodgers.
Not better than Aaron Rodgers. If he plays, because Aaron Rodgers obviously didn't have a good year, and again, we can say that's the wide receiver. We can say that's the thumb. We can say that's a lot of different things. But even if it is that situation, he's 40 years old this year.
So if Jordan Love, I guess, played at a comparable level to Aaron Rodgers, that would be one thing. I think that's unlikely.
But then again, but you want to see that, because if he does play at that level, you can trade Aaron Rodgers away. Like I was saying, the numbers wise, this year we can eat $15 million this year, $20 million next year,
but
versus $60 million
as a young quarterback with little experience, with the wide receiver core of Allen Lazard, Christian Watson, and Sammy Watkins,
Sammy Watkins was traded at that or released, but Romeo Doubs.
Romeo Doubs.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle to see that he comes out and puts on a show. Now, I think the more likely scenario would be he comes out and he's pedestrian at best or bad. What though would actually change the Packers' plan moving forward? Because let's say you see that. Well, how does that change your offseason? You go into an offseason without a clear number one wide receiver, owing Aaron Rodgers still $40 million and a 15th draft pick. I guess if you were losing, it would be higher than 15th. Maybe it would be 10.
So that's the same. That's what I'm saying.
You're not going to be, top 4 or top 5 unless you trade up for it somehow.
That's the thing. So
you're missing many, many pieces.
We're missing the biggest thing obviously is, we got wide receiver, tight end's a big issue, safety's a big issue. We have obviously Adrian Amos and, Darnell Savage. Savage kind of was obviously mediocre this year. Amos is just getting older. He played well, but we'll see what happens with that. Our defense obviously on paper still is really good. We'll see what happens with that, but obviously offense is the biggest need. And we have built the defense so much in the draft using draft capital that hopefully this year we can invest into the offense and go from there.
It might be too little, too late.
But I mean, that's the thing, right? So that's what I'm saying. So Jordan Love is under contract this year with his rookie deal this coming year, and then we have a 5th-year option for him.
I just don't understand how the Packers are here. I don't understand how after Aaron Rodgers' MVP season, when you have Devontae Adams, when you have your offense clicking, right? Because A.J. Dillon maybe was not on the team yet, was he?
He was drafted the same year as Jordan Love.
Okay.
He was the 2nd-round pick.
Okay. But you had Aaron Jones playing. How can you not go around the league and say, look at the Green Bay Packers. We just went to the NFC Championship. We have one of the all-time great quarterbacks who wants to play with one of the top wide receivers in the league and one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time coming off his MVP season with a run game, with a defense, theoretically, to boot. We're looking at winning a Super Bowl, guys. Is there anyone that wants to join this team? And just crickets. What does that mean?
Oh, I mean, if the Packers, obviously, again, hindsight, but if the Packers could do it over again, you trade Jordan Love after that first year.
Yes.
If you can, obviously, I don't know money-wise what would have happened.
But even with free agents.
But you trade him, and you try to get a 3rd, maybe a 4th-round pick, bite the bullet, and try to trade him off as saying, oh, well, he was behind Aaron Rodgers for a year, MVP year, get him out of the room.
I mean, you always hear about, I don't understand why the Packers can't get free agents.
It's because it's cold weather.
It can't just be a weather thing, though.
It's cold weather. It's no ownership. That's a big thing. That's what people say, is because there's no owner that goes out and says, hey, we want you.
But the GM then has to do that.
GM does that, but again, it's apparently from what I've heard is it's beautiful and awesome that the Packers fans and everything can own the team. Obviously, I'm an owner, or whatever. But it's one of those things where it's like it's beautiful, but at the same time, like you said, in free agency, you have all these pieces and everything. You have the greatest quarterback. Again, maybe not. Obviously, he's back-to-back MVP these past 2 years, but that's an argument. But you have one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL, and you're pretty much telling them, okay, yeah, we have Adams, but you would be you would be a top target, especially this past year. You go out, and again, you have the Eagles that traded for A.J. Brown or whatever.
Yeah.
You go out and make that move.
And that's why I don't get the weather thing. Like maybe some of these stadiums are indoors, but a lot of teams have cold weather. The Bills are they're in Buffalo.
There's
is it
quite
Minnesota cold with
it's
the Vikings?
indoor.
Oh, okay. So that's an indoor stadium. What about Baltimore? What
Outdoor.
about Cincinnati
Outdoor.
with the Bengals? What about
But then again, think about it though.
What about Pittsburgh and the Browns? I mean, these are all cold places. The Broncos, Mile High City, Denver gets cold. Is that indoor stadium?
That's outdoor.
Okay. What about Philadelphia Eagles?
That's outdoor.
They were able to get a huge acquisition.
But the thing is what free agents have signed with those teams that you just named?
Well,
there's
A.J. Brown,
trades,
right?
but that's a trade.
So then, but I guess the question is, why then can't they trade? There's just no.
That's the Packers' philosophy. We build through the draft. It's the worst philosophy in the league.
And that's why I'm saying the philosophy has to change.
Oh yeah.
The GM has to go.
It's tough to say the GM has to go because I think there's been some players that he's gotten that have played really well and they've done really well. I think the biggest issue is the coaching staff.
But when you think about the Packers and their success, how much of it can be attributed to the brilliance of a GM drafting strategy, and how much can be attributed to the last 40 years or more being helmed by, or about 40 years, 30 years, being helmed by 2 first ballot Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
It's close to 40.
Yeah, close to 40.
It's like 35, close to 40.
Right. You have had 2 quarterbacks in a row that have played for about 2 decades apiece that are top 3 of their generation quarterbacks, right? You also have like Devontae Adams. I'm sure you drafted him, right?
Oh yeah, we drafted him. We had, obviously we had the amazing group of Greg Jennings, Donald Driver, Jordy Nelson, all of those guys.
So you draft, so Devontae Adams, you draft,
Greg
and then
Jennings.
you just ride that one draft pick
That's the issue.
for so long until
Mm-hmm.
he finally leaves at like 30 years old.
Mhm.
And so that's the thing, is I struggle to see the year in, year out actual plans or motions so much as how fortunate is it that we have all-time great quarterbacks that stay. We drafted, lucky us, we got a great generational, wide receiver who has stayed. What is happening in all that space when that becomes obvious, right?
Yeah.
Like, what GM couldn't have a successful team with Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers and just say, all right, I'm going to pick a, top wide receiver in one draft class. Oh, Devontae Adams, he's been so great. Who couldn't do that, right?
And that's the thing, right? So it's like you look at the situation, and I mean, another issue with the Packers also is I know Packers fans love Watson and love Dobbs, but I am so hesitant with injuries with them.
Mhm.
I'm like scared because you look at that as well and say it sucks, but if you have an injury to like one of your top players, the season's done.
Yeah.
Like really, like if Justin Jefferson gets injured, what were the Vikings going to do? Yeah, they have a decent offense, but they're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Like you have to think that's like 10 catches a game.
Yep.
That's 100 yards receiving a game.
Yep.
So it's like it's one of those situations where if you get one of those guys injured, we didn't get durable players. Like Watson, obviously great speed, great size, obviously working on his catching ability, but he's injury prone. Dobbs was injury prone, and obviously Aaron Rodgers had injuries this year when he was on the field. Obviously Aaron Rodgers didn't miss anything, but when Aaron Rodgers was on the field throwing, he either had great throws that weren't caught because the receivers dropped it, or just bad throws when the receivers would be open. Like in the games that I was watching as a Packers fan throughout the past obviously like years and years and years, it's always like, okay, Aaron Rodgers is in the game, we're good. We're not going to turn the ball over. We're going to have a great drive, it's going to be fine.
Mhm.
This past season, especially late, it was always like, okay, Aaron Rodgers is stepping back to throw it. Is he going to throw an interception?
Right.
Especially in the Lions game.
Right.
The Lions game, they just pressured him. And usually Aaron Rodgers, especially in years before, was really good against, just finding the openings when there was blitzes. But this year, especially these past couple of games, it's like very scary. And like penalties would, help us out because it'd be like, okay, we just threw an interception, but there was a flag against the defense. Okay, thank goodness. And it was baffling to see that. And so it hurts because you had the mixture of both. And then what really, really, obviously, as Packers fans know, the red zone offense was atrocious. We went into the red zone so many times, and we would come up with a field goal, get stopped on fourth down.
And isn't that why you have that running back duo?
Exactly.
Right? Yes.
And it's like you would get down there, especially like first and goal from like the 8 is so difficult because everybody expects to run the first play, and that's what always the Packers would do. You'd run it the first play, get a yard, and then you're looking at 2nd and 7. It's like, okay, if we try to run it again and we get to like the 4, then you're talking about have to pass it, and it was so textbook and so easy to read for the defenses to be like, okay, this is what the Packers are going to do. This is what's happening. The red zone offense just never got off the ground. Cost us a lot of games, especially like, again, the Lions game. We went into the red zone a bunch of times. Didn't do well. And, again, we went, I think there was a stat, I don't remember off the top of my head, but we went to like the Lions side of the field between the 2 games that we lost, obviously, this year. We went onto their side of the field this year, like, at least over 10 times and only had like 2 touchdowns or something like that, or 3 touchdowns. that can't happen. You can't go on that side of the field and score that little.
Right.
It's just I wanted to bring that up because it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously on the other side you have the defense that again it never meshed. Like all three phases of the football team, special teams, defense, and offense never meshed. Other than maybe you can say the Vikings game, I think maybe. But even the offense that game just again when you're up that much you just kind of run the ball and do whatever. But the defense played really well that game obviously, and of course the special teams again had the block punt but had their return touchdown. So it's like it's one of those things where it's like finally they meshed together and we crushed the Vikings. It's disappointing that again I was watching obviously pretty much every single game this year, and every single time we would go have a great drive on offense, the defense would let up points. Or if the offense had a struggle, defense we need to stop, the defense would let in points. It just was never like, okay, let's get the momentum back. Let's go for it. And so it's very frustrating that on paper defense is really good, and again, I think Joe Barry needs to go. I think we can find a better defensive coordinator. I know Wisconsin, the Badgers, the college team, has their defensive coordinator that just lost his job. We're looking at him. But there's so many other options that it's like, okay, yeah, he's been with the team and he's decent. He did okay last year. Why not get rid of him and try something new? Try to get better. Because this team is just not going anywhere with that. And maybe the Packers bring back Nathaniel Hackett. He tried his stint with the Broncos, obviously did not do well, got fired. Does he come back to be the offensive coordinator? We had him. We won 13 games every year he was the offensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
Does he come back? Because if he comes back, then maybe you're talking about a whole different situation. He comes back, we maybe get a wide receiver in free agency, get a defensive coordinator that's better and maybe can challenge teams and kind of build through that. Then we honestly could look like a whole different team next year. But again, like Ian was referring to, it all comes down to what we do. It all comes down to, like you said, the GM making the moves necessary, or again, the players becoming better. Like that's just what it is.
And as you've been talking about the strategies they have, I've been looking through the 2021 draft class, and there are so many.
Was that Rashawn Gary draft? Was that who we drafted? Do you have that in front of you?
Hold on, I can look.
I think that was 2021, or was that 2019?
Green Bay got Eric Stokes.
Eric Stokes. That's
29.
another injury. Yeah, I mean that happened this year too. It's like he was injured this year, and that really hurt the defense, obviously. But again, yeah, we had
when you look at like the people that were going, obviously higher, but if I'm the Packers and I'm sitting there at what did they draft?
29th, I think.
29th. Maybe you do try to do a trade. Maybe you do try to trade up and get someone. Now you probably would have traded up and gotten Kadarius Toney, but maybe he would have been better if Daniel Jones wasn't his quarterback, right?
Maybe.
But you've got Jamar Chase drafted, immediate stud, right? You've got
that was early though.
Early, but Devontae Smith at 10, still early. But
I mean,
underneath, you have, for instance,
who was drafted after? That's what I want to know.
Josh Palmer, who's
he's played well on the Chargers. Not really like. I think
he has played better than Alan Lazard has.
Oh yeah, for sure.
As the number 2.
Yeah. On
the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
In the 4th round is where St. Brown.
Yeah.
Who is
could have
number
teamed up with his brother.
Number 1 wide receiver for the Lions.
Lions.
Right. Let's see who else is on here that I recognize. Some of these names I don't know.
Yeah.
They haven't really done anything. Yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, and that's 2021. Obviously, it's not like they would have done amazing. What a rate!
What a rate!
Yeah. But I don't know why they couldn't still make a stab at it. Try to get a wide receiver in the 1st round. Try to draft up and get one of those top guys. trying to plug in for this season.
Mm-hmm.
What about the 2020 draft class? Could have gotten a guy who,
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Jordan Love and AJ Dillon. Sorry, AJ Dillon, obviously great running back, but we drafted a running back in the second round.
Yeah.
When we needed a quarterback, and then we drafted DeGuara in the third round, a tight end in the third round. But again, he was a tight end / fullback. Like that was his designation was. He's obviously not a pass catching tight end.
Where did you get Jordan Love?
First round.
First round, what position? You drafted
20th. I think I obviously don't have it in front of me.
in 2020?
2020, yep.
26.
26th. Okay.
Jordan Love. Okay, yeah. You traded up to 26.
Mm-hmm.
The people that were drafted, this wide receiver draft class
Was crazy.
You have, and again, you would have had to trade up, but you were already
Okay,
traded.
but I'm saying so then who was after? That's what I want to know because I know there's Justin Jefferson. I'm pretty sure was in that draft class.
CeeDee Lamb. So yeah,
CeeDee
it's
Lamb.
Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs was drafted top, right?
That's who we would have probably ended up with.
Jerry Jeudy was also drafted. These are all above. And Brandon Ayuk.
That's good. Yeah,
he was
really
drafted
good.
at 25th, right before you
Right
guys.
before us.
So after that, T. Higgins was drafted. Michael Pittman Jr. was drafted. DeAndre Swift was drafted by the Lions as a running back.
Yeah.
But as a Jonathan Taylor was drafted by the Colts at 41st.
And I remember that pick, and I'm thinking because he was up there, he broke records or whatever for Wisconsin. I was always like, why did he slide so far? Yeah, I mean, you're talking Michael Pittman obviously would be the one that I would look at.
Let's also reflect that you traded up for Jordan Love. Jalen Hurts was drafted 53rd.
Oh,
to
100%.
the Eagles.
I remember it was the weirdest pick because again,
J.K. Dobbins was drafted.
Yeah, running back.
But I'm just saying Van Jefferson was drafted.
He's all right.
But you needed someone.
Yeah.
He would have been a good number 2.
Yeah, he would.
Right, I would have taken Van Jefferson and put him behind Devontae Adams.
Because I don't think we drafted a wide receiver that year.
No, you didn't.
Did.
That's what's crazy. And you didn't even draft the best available quarterback. You didn't draft probably the best available running backs. No. I mean, it's just
And again, A.J. Dillon, I think is really good. I do. I really think was really good and still is really good, especially with the kind of 1-2 punch with Aaron Jones or whatever. So I'm not upset with that one as much. I remember the day of that, or I guess multiple days of that draft, when we went quarterback, which again had Aaron Rodgers, running back had Aaron Jones, tight end. Again, yes, we needed a tight end, but we drafted a blocking tight end that's not really, obviously we even know now that he hasn't been that good. So it's very frustrating, obviously, especially in 2020. If we had drafted, like you said, some of those wide receivers, especially Michael Pittman Jr. or someone like that, Ayuk even, we draft someone like that, and we could have drafted Jalen Hurts.
Gabriel Davis was drafted at 145.
Yeah, you draft any one of those guys. Again, maybe we don't know. Obviously, we know now hindsight again with the whole, they were actually good. But you take a shot on one of them in the first round.
Darnell Mooney. I mean, it's just yeah, you might have picked one of these guys that didn't go anywhere, but some of the people that didn't do well also were drafted by the Houston Texans. Yeah. Teams without quarterbacks. Imagine if you had taken a stab at one of these guys from a reputable college, and even Kadarius Toney. He didn't play great at the Giants, had a lot of injuries, but maybe playing with Aaron Rodgers instead of
We'll
Daniel
see what
Jones,
happens with Patrick Mahomes and him. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. But it's there's so many people. There's really no excuse.
Because then again, you also think about it. You look back at it, and it's we want a wide receiver now, but everybody's oh well, but they take time to develop. They might they do this, that, and the other. Think about if we had drafted a wide receiver, one of those guys in 2020, he would have played with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams for 2 years.
Yes, no, that's what I'm saying.
For 2 years, and then this year would have been his third year.
And that's why I was also listing the guys that were high draft pick wide receivers. you could have made a move to get a guy in the first round, maybe not, a top 10, but bottom half of the first round, who would, like some of those names, immediate impact players that you could have put in and really made a difference. I mean, there's even people that were just drafted last year in the first round. Like Chris Olave was drafted at 11th and is the number one.
Again, no, we had 2 first-round picks. We could have traded up, but again, it was a weird. We drafted 2 defensive players, which again we needed a middle linebacker. We needed a defensive tackle, or defensive lineman at least. Those 2 picks, I'm not upset about. And again, Christian Watson, not upset about. But the issue is, 2 years ago, if those 2 draft picks or those 3 draft picks had been made in 2020, 2 defensive players and a wide receiver. Again, timing. It goes back to timing. You draft those 3 people, again, maybe different players or whatever, but those 3 types of people, you have 2 years with that. It looks so much better. And maybe you do draft the quarterback. Like if the Packers would have drafted the quarterback maybe now or last year even, waited another 2 years or so, then you're talking about, okay, we're pushing for the future. A lot of teams don't draft a quarterback until they need one. Yep. I don't know of a team that drafts a quarterback when they don't need one.
And right.
It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. And so Christian Watson, that was a good pick for you.
It was a really good pick.
But when you look at so there were some people drafted above him. Well, I guess not many.
But also George Pickens was drafted after him.
But there's a lot of people drafted after him too. George Pickens was drafted after him. There were a lot of people though too that were drafted after him that you haven't heard about as much, but they didn't necessarily. They're either going to loaded wide receiver places or they're going to a place without a quarterback. When you are drafting a wide receiver to play with Aaron Rodgers, you have some understanding that they're probably gonna have an okay season. You hope.
Yeah.
If they can catch.
And I mean, Christian Watson obviously had a really good stretch, and the end of the year, second half of the year, he's been really good. But again, the same breath, Dobbs was really good in the beginning of the year and really tapered off after the injury. So it's one of those things where it's I think it was very few snaps that both players played together.
Yep.
But at the same time, the way the offense is built, it's such a weird situation.
In 2022, you guys, the Green Bay Packers, were tied for the most selections. Yeah.
We had a lot of, because we had the Adams trade, which we got a first and a second with that.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with that. Any other last remarks?
No, just that I think they need a new strategy. They're just aimless right now.
I think you're in between 2 strategies, like you said. You're in between the Chiefs strategy of just surrounding yourself, but you're also trying to go with the 49er strategy.
And you're paying a lot of money to players.
So yeah, we'll talk about this furthermore, and when obviously the offseason is going to happen, and we'll see